Canada's Northwest Territories covers a massive amount of land, the size of Alberta and Saskatchewan combined. With just over 40,000 residents, half of which live in its capital, most communities are small, with no roads in or out. Life in the North is expensive, and residents pay 93% more for heating, electricity, water, and fuel than the average Canadian. I was in a fly-in-only community shooting inspirational stories for 100 Huntley Street and wanted to check out the prices for myself, so I headed down to the grocery store. This town has two, so competition has driven prices down. So we bought 2 bananas, $2.15, so that's over $1 a banana right here. And these are good-looking bananas because a lot of stores you can't get them unless they're brown. Here we got 2 nectarines for $2.87. So this nectarine is over $1.40 just for one. It's actually hard, but it looks like it's in good shape. Actually, the fruit here is in pretty good shape. And then we got 2 apples for $1.98. That's $1 an apple. And we also saw at the store, we saw like $18 for a big bag of flour, $18 for a big jar of Cheese Whiz. I mean, it was just shocking. You're just walking up and down the aisle going, oh my goodness, like 2 to 3 times the prices that you would pay anywhere else in Canada in the South. So if you live here, you gotta have a lot of money. I was halfway through my trip to the Northwest Territories, and today I was scheduled to fly back to Norman Wells, a prosperous oil town on the Mackenzie River. Our stay was sponsored by the Heritage Hotel, the most comfortable and beautiful accommodations we'd stayed in so far. The most outstanding feature in the town for me, besides numerous oil wells, was a beautifully carved wooden bridge. But we weren't here for long, and the next morning we hopped in a boat with Pastor Lance Jacques to jet up the Mackenzie 145 kilometers to the community of Fort Good Hope. The river's only accessible by boat a few months of the year when the ice melts. After a few hours, we stopped for lunch at Sanso Rapids. The scenery was gorgeous, and Lance told me there was something else I had to see, an old hunter's cabin in the bush. But he brought his rifle along in case we ran into a bear.
He put his hand in some green paint.
I could see why he was worried. The interior of the cabin was covered with huge green grizzly paw prints. Apparently a bear had broken in looking for food and accidentally stepped in a can of green paint.
They're fair size.
Looking at the size of the footprints, I was glad we hadn't run into him. Walking this land, you can't help thinking about those who came before and what their life was like in this wild and remote part of the world. The people of the North are survivors, not only of extreme weather, but also of dangerous wildlife, lack of medical help, and fluctuation in food supply. If needed, many still have the skills to live off the land and survive quite well. Soon we were back on the river, navigating through the ramparts, one of the most spectacular gorges I'd ever seen. The limestone cliffs extend for 12 kilometers. It was stunning, but I couldn't help thinking I wouldn't want to capsize here with no way to get out. It took us longer than we'd hoped to get to this town of more than 500, and there wasn't much time left before we had to leave. The community was the oldest fur trading post in the lower Mackenzie Valley and is known for Our Lady of Good Hope Church, designated a National Historic Site. It was decorated with murals by a Catholic priest in 1878 and restored back to its original beauty in 1993. It was time to go, and our flight was with Jason, a pilot we'd flown with when we first arrived. He offered me the chance to fly again, and with a little experience under my belt, I took over the controls for most of the way back to Norman Wells. The next morning, we did what I had been anticipating the entire trip. We crossed the Arctic Circle and flew to Inuvik, the largest town in the Arctic. This community of almost 3,500 also has a famous church, patterned to look like an igloo. Our Lady of Victory was designed by Brother Maurice Larocque, who wanted to create something that blended Catholic symbolism with local custom. It was beautiful and unique. But something else about this northern town fascinated me, especially in the season I visited, July. So we're here at Inuvik, and it's called the Land of the Midnight Sun, and you'll never guess what time it is right now. It looks like it's about 8 o'clock at night. It's actually almost midnight, and the sun won't even go down tonight because this part of the world gets 56 days of 24-hour daylight. Even at midnight, people drop by their neighbors or make plans to go out for the evening. It's hard to sleep when the sun is shining outside your window. But that challenge must be easier to face than the 30 days at the end of the year when this part of the world plunges into 24 hours of darkness. Anubik was the first town I'd been to on this trip that was connected to a highway system. The next morning, I hopped on the Dempster Highway for the 3-hour drive to Fort McPherson. We hit the Peel River and took a ferry across, which usually runs from 9 a.m. to midnight, June to October. From December to March, cars can cross the ice, and the highway is closed during breakup times. But the real challenge of summer in the north are the thousands, perhaps millions, of little winged creatures that think of humans as dinner.
All right, so we're here in the middle of nowhere. We're on our way to Fort McPherson. It's a 3-hour drive down this very bumpy and slippery gravel road. And you know, as soon as you leave the vehicle, and actually the inside of this vehicle, covered in mosquitoes and bugs, it's insane. I've never been in a vehicle up here, even a rental, without bug spray. We won't say the brand. Bug spray that's here, and you can't go outside without it, or else you get eaten alive.
I began to think of the spray as the perfume of the north. Upon arriving in Fort McPherson, a town of around 800, we had the privilege of attending St. Matthew's Anglican Church, which holds services in English and the local Dene language of Gwich'in. It's part of this Aboriginal community's epic battle to retain their culture.
When you can speak your language fluently, I guess you have a good self-esteem, you know, and I feel I have that. And it's really important for me to speak my language. I speak it as often as I can.
The first Anglican missionary to live here was Archdeacon Robert MacDonald. He's greatly loved because he translated the Bible into the Gwich'in language, which they use as a reference to help remember words that are slowly fading away.
The only way that we'll be able to speak and read in our language and do the services in our language is to continue to do that. There's a lot of people that don't understand it, but then, you know, they keep coming and they're beginning to read a little bit.
It was time to drive back to Inuvik to catch my flight home. As I drove through the stunning scenery, I reflected back on my time here.
As my travels in all of Canada have shown me, what it means to be a Canadian varies from place to place. And the people up here have been so friendly, and I talk to so many people about the harshness of the conditions up here sometimes, how it's dark all day in the winter, but they tell me that it's the people that they really love up here, and it's true. I've never had so many people help us out with so many things, free hotel rooms, free flights, just the generosity, people feeding us and giving us gifts. It's just been really overwhelming and really wonderful.
I didn't know if or when I'd be back, but I knew my time here had changed me. I would never look at this country quite the same way again, and meeting the people of the North taught me about history, pain, forgiveness, courage, perseverance, hospitality, and community. Those lessons were something I take with me, along with friendships and adventures unlike anything else I'd found in the world.
You have a mosquito on your head.
Even in the van, I can't get rid of these stupid things. Get off me! Ah!